AJ, welcome to the PIK Recovery Talks. So today we're going to cover the subject of am I an addict?
Yeah, no worries, mate.
So I'll just explain where that came from. You know, so it's a part of a 12-step fellowship program, and they do a nice little information pamphlet, kind of runs us through a series of questions. I think 29, 30 questions. We won't go through all of them, but we'll throw a few in there just a bit thought-provoking. But first of all, tell us a little bit about the moment you kind of realised you were an addict.
So I'm 34 years of age now, and I didn't really think that I had a problem for many years. I was in what I call now active addiction for about 16 years, but it became really lonely towards the end. You know, it was isolating, and funny enough, I met someone through a fellowship who mentioned the process that he'd gone through, and I basically took direction and listened, and it stemmed from there really.
So tell me about that process, because so I know a little bit about it myself. We kind of come into the rooms, and I suppose we're there because we haven't really got anywhere else to go. And the process of realising, I'll kind of say it how it is. The process of realising I'm fucked. And actually, I might be a bit more fucked than I initially realised.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen straight away, does it? So we come into, like I just said, we come into rooms because we've got nowhere left to go. Someone says, go to a meeting. And then we get into a meeting, we hear a bit of story, identification is what we call it in the 12-step program. And then, what was that process like? Was it an instant?
No, so for me, his experience was that he'd went to a treatment centre. So I'd never heard of the fellowships or 12 steps before. So I got on my hands and knees. I confessed to my parents that I think I might have a problem. And it stemmed from there. They thankfully paid for my rehabilitation in 2015, which the journey sort of began. I was took to meetings, introduced to recovery, and they planted the seeds, as we call it. Someone said to me once about, we're farmers planting seeds, and them seeds in 2015 were planted.
Absolutely. So some of the questions, I printed this out because it's a really good information pamphlet. So if you're struggling with addiction, and these might apply to some of you. So we'll go through them now, and I suppose we could just answer yes or no.
Let's go.
Yeah. So did I ever use a loan?
Yeah, I did use a loan. Yeah.
Absolutely. It wasn't like that in the beginning, was it? Though
No, it was socialising, partying. I thought you were boring if you didn't use.
Yeah.
You know, I thought if you were working a 9 to 5 and not out all weekend, you were boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that was the reality for me.
Yeah, and there's like a moment, isn't there? So like you said, we're out partying or we're socialising. Whether that's whether it's hard class A or maybe some of the more party drugs like cocaine or ecstasy, and then there's a moment where we just find ourselves sat in a room. Someone once described that to me: sat in a room with you, your character defects, and your disease.
Yeah.
Like a party for free, and you're just using on your own. And there's that realisation, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, another good question. Have I ever manipulated or lied to obtain, or have I ever stolen for drugs?
Yeah, well, I definitely, I would run out of excuses, in previous jobs that I was in. I'd have to lie, I'd manipulate people, and not necessarily steal from my parents, but I definitely robbed my mum's peace of mind. She never knew if she was going to get a knock at the door to say that I'd been lifed off or perhaps that I'd been found dead. And I did that for years. It wasn't as much. I sort of excused some of it and thought, well, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing this, but I was taking part in other ways of trying to substitute it and all sorts of stuff and just drag my sorry ass, excuse my language, through life, like...
And I think another thing people will be able to identify with, using starts to cost us. And when I say cost us, and give us your own experience, families, relationship with your son.
Yeah, so I wasn't always there for my son. I was there, but I wasn't emotionally there for him. Relationship breaks down, I'd disappear. I wouldn't come back home. I'd make arguments up to get out of the house. As I say, loss of jobs. It just got in the way of everything. My life was like, it was completely unmanageable.
Yeah,
It,
totally.
it was tiring. It was tiring. I was living like an animal, just living to survive, basically, getting more money together, working, and then straight back at it. I wasn't an everyday user,
Yeah.
but when I used, I used.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, we go full board, don't we? You know, we go totally into it. And like addiction just takes everything, absolutely takes everything, and then that gets real painful. So you take more drugs to numb that pain, and then you know, the fact that you're taking more drugs just becomes more painful. So, you know, and it's just this vicious cycle over and over and over again.
It was, they call it the merry-go-round, don't they?
Yeah.
And I'd get clean, I'd stop using, and then it would be days or weeks, and I'd do it all over again.
Yeah.
It's just like that. I didn't know anything different.
How long did you do that for?
It's about 16 years on and off, literally. I used to call myself a weekend millionaire, because I'd get any money and wages on a Friday, and by the time a Monday come, I was well into my overdraft,
Yeah.
and I was grafting like a lunatic to get my money back again, and then I'd smash myself to bits.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this you know, this is really good. Let me just pick a couple out. So does the thought of running out of drugs did it ever terrify you?
When I thought that it was running out, I was ringing dealers up. I've said this before. They'd say I'll be 10 minutes, and I'd be ringing for 3 hours. Where are you? Where are you? You know, I would try and control it. That would never work. I'd try and do little bits. That would never work. And then the thought of the bag running out, it was like,
Yeah, absolutely.
what am I going to do?
Yeah, I remember that. You know, I remember scoring and using. Forget the using for a sec. I remember scoring and then thinking about how I was going to get more drugs before I'd even used the drugs that I got. You know, so you know, I could never really enjoy it anyway. You know, and mine was a physical dependence, so I was kind of just using to be able to function, really. You know, in the end of it. Yeah. So did you? Yeah. You know, another good one, which I think we can gloss over. You know, you know, addiction kind of starts. You know, to quote Eckhart Tolle, starts in pain, ends in pain. So you know, it says, have we ever used drugs because of emotional pain or stress? And I think we really miss that. You know, we really miss kind of why we got it. You know, we come into the rooms and we're just fucked. We're just fucking broken from years of fucking using, and then we can kind of forget why we used.
Oh, I'd definitely forget the pain. I'd use on any excuse, to be honest.
Yeah.
If it was a sunny day, I would use. A rainy day, I would use. A bad day at work, I'd use. An argument at home in relationship or with a colleague, I'd use. There was literally any excuse in the book, I would justify and rationalise in my head an excuse to get on it.
Yeah.
I've had a hard day at work, bosh. Oh, I've had this go on, bosh. It was easy for me to get an excuse.
What was the reason you started using?
The reason was, I don't really know the reason, but all I know is that when I was a small child, I always felt different, where I didn't fit in with the cool kids. I got on well with girls more than boys. I couldn't play football. I was picked on. And then I sort of felt more accepted with the older generation, which I felt part of, and I would be committing crimes. But looking back, I was groomed. But I thought I was being accepted. You know, they were putting me in people's windows or getting me to do things, and just for their love and their attention, I had no boundaries. Absolutely. And then I fell into it. As I say, growing up, it was the partying, the clubbing, the raving. And then, as I say, towards the end, it was like sitting in the front room or in the kitchen with some random people, flat out on it. They'd all go home, get up to work, and I'd be left broken, suicidal, like, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. So what was the turning point, you know, and you know, really have a think about it, and really just, you know, because for me, I kind of, you know, I went into treatment. I didn't necessarily want to do a 12-step program, but it was part of the treatment, you know, thank God it was, you know, and they took me to a meeting every single day. I think I did 328 meetings back to back in my first year. And, you know, that was given to me. They made sure I got to a meeting, you know, and if I went home on a weekend visit, I was in treatment at the time. You know, and like I had to be taught how to love myself. You you know, and I kicked and screamed most of the way.
Mm.
You know, so tell us about that, your experience of coming into the...
So my experience, I went to rehab. They planted the seeds. I was sort of ticking boxes. I was agreeing. I was yesing. I was making out I knew what that was the problem. But again, I was under the influence. Still looking back, I managed to stay abstinent. But I thought just because I wasn't using drugs, alcohol as well being a drug, I thought, well, I'm all right. And eventually after rehab, as I say, I stayed clean, but I didn't follow through with the suggestions, the 4S's, sponsorship, sharing, service, steps. And I come under the illusion because I'd then got everything external. I was like, oh, I'd start drinking, I'll be able to control it now. And then eventually I came out of a relationship. I basically ended that relationship to use more. She found out I was using primarily a substance. And then it just stemmed again. And before you know it, 2 years, 4 months and 31 days ago, I was left upside down in my car. I had to get cut out of it. I broke my back, my ribs. I had 12 fractures in my femur, which I've now got a metal rod. And I was just in hospital. My mum was screaming on the phone, and it was funny because my mum, I'd lied to her, and I said to my mum, this is the insanity of it. I said, Mum, I'm at peace. And she goes, what do you mean you're at peace? And I couldn't get back. And it had to be for me to nearly lose my life, for me to go, right, I need to use this now, what they taught me in rehab, and I need to really get in the middle of it. And that's what I did.
So did you relate in that moment? You know, I can sort of picture you laying in a hospital bed, and you know, and so the subject's, you know, am I an addict? Is it like at that moment you're like, yeah, okay, I'm an addict?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Everything I'm going through now is a culmination of my using.
For sure, for sure. The prisons, it was the prisons and the rehab, and I still had a bit of a reservation looking back. You know, I thought, well, because I'd always used, I knew nothing else.
Yeah.
But then when I was in that hospital bed, left fighting for my life, it was like, I'm done. I was just like, look now, nearly losing my life, and my experience, nothing. No matter how much I've done or done in the past, I don't know, and I need help.
Okay, good. So yeah, surrender, isn't it? They call it surrender, and you know, it comes in waves. It comes around different subjects, you know, and we'll talk about we'll talk about that another time. But I'm just so you know, that's okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. You're in recovery. And we'll cover a lot of the addiction side of things in a different show with someone else, but I think we can probably touch on it now. So you've put down drugs, life's looking all right, you're in a 12-step program, you know, your shit's kind of together, you know, and then, you know, how does it come out now, and where does it manifest?
So it will come out now in stuff. Again, it comes out in many different ways, you know. But primarily it can come out in greed, it can come out in procrastination, putting things off, it can come out in shopping. On any given day, I believe, like I haven't been around a long time, but I'm learning and continue to learn along the way up until now.
Yeah.
And I know as well I'm not cured. And I've heard from people who will be speaking after me through their experience, you know, where the connection is that I'm learning is they've been through it, they've been around a little bit longer, and that's where we do what we've been taught to do, isn't it? Reach out. If something comes up, get open and honest.
Yeah.
Because it's got nothing to do with the drugs today. You know, it's my self-centered fear in between my ears. And the worst thing is, Dan, it talks to me in my own voice. If it spoke to me in your voice, I'd be like, get out.
Get out with you.
this will convince me that I know best, and that it will be different this time. But I thank God I've got the awareness and the understanding today, and to carry that through with the application.
Yeah, and that's that thing, you know, when we come into recovery early on, you know, and we kind of realise we're an addict, and then we get a little bit of program, they call it, and you know, we learn a bit of, you know, a few words here and there, and we pick up a few tools. I'll tell you what I've noticed about myself is, and I like the way you said it talks to me in my own voice, and then what it does is it use, you know, I can use my program against myself, and then so I have to still, one of the earliest things I was told, check your thinking.
Yeah.
You know, go and, you know, so if you're struggling, if you're an addict, go and ask someone, do you think I'm an addict? And if they tell you, you know, I say it all the time, if 10 people call you a horse, buy a saddle. You know, if 10 people call you a horse, buy a saddle, you're probably a fucking horse.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, and I would say to anyone, you know, and I talk to people all the time, they say, oh, I'm struggling. And then you try and sort of tell them about themselves. And then they won't have it. And people take that really personally, you know. And
well, there's the saying we use, isn't it? It's, we can't carry the addict. We can only carry the message.
Yeah.
And some people will be ready. If they're not ready now, they might be ready later on. But again, we're here to help with the information, aren't we? And give it away, you know.
So what does life look like for you now? Because, you know, I work with you. I know you, you know, personally, you're part of my support network.
Yeah.
You know, and I've spent a lot of time with you since I've come to Thailand. And, you know, I see your life. Your life looks pretty cool, man. You know, it looks pretty good. You're kind of doing your thing on TikTok.
Yeah.
And, you know, but we still struggle with that stuff, man. You know, where's your biggest struggle at the minute?
My biggest struggle at the minute.
And be real, be totally real. And
probably slowing down and just being present, not projecting, you know, looking into the future. And I've had to, on the topic of TikTok, you know, I've had to watch the obsession with TikTok, because when I started TikToking early on, I was doing more TikToking than I was recovery.
Yeah, I get you.
And I was obsessing over the likes, obsessing over the followers, obsessing over people telling me I'm doing good and well done. And I've had to sort of review that, because recovery must come first. So what I've done is had the awareness just to not fully focus on that, and whatever comes of it, comes of it.
Yeah.
Not trying to control it, or if it doesn't work out, beat myself up that I'm doing something wrong. Because that's what I can do. I can go into self-sabotage and that old way of thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. Why am I not in these tournaments? Why am I not in the weeklies? And at the end of the day, that's not where my priority is. My priority is just doing what I'm doing. And as I say, education with continuation and no destination in it.
Yeah, cool. So what's the one thing, you know, you've been around a little while now, what's the kind of one thing that you've learned about yourself? Or learning, you know, because it's a continuous.
I think the one thing is what I've come to now, at a point where my work, what I do with my time has changed, you know. And it was when someone close to me, he said, be more professional. And it was like, it made me feel really uncomfortable, and my head can go out in a place where I'm like, I want to go, but I get it. Because I've got to remain reachable and teachable. And it's funny, isn't it? What I think I know through having my own businesses in the past, I'm in a different area of my life now.
Yeah.
So it's like, accept it for what it is. You know, it's not necessarily, my head will go to, oh, you're singling me out, oh, what, and go into a bit of self-pity and self-sabotage. But the reality is, it's a new thing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
You know, and it is learning. I learn off yourself. I learn off of Rich and the people like that I look up to. But yeah, being told that certain things, I know when there's growth in it, because I've been shown when it's uncomfortable, it's growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like when I feel it, you know, it takes a little while. My ego is normally the first thing to react, and then once that moves out of the way, I go, have they got a point? You know, I weigh up the evidence and go, yeah, they've got a point.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Then I can change that. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And yeah, Jay, do you know what, man? It's been really nice. You know, thanks for coming on and doing it.
Anytime, man.
And I know you're a massive supporter of the PIK podcast.
Yeah.
You know, you've been shouting me out on your TikTok, and
for sure.
You know, I know you were pushing it last night, so I really appreciate that. You know.
Yeah.
And I suppose I better say thanks to Ian Young, because he's let us use this beautiful venue.
Yeah, for sure.
And kind of let us have a bit of free run. And yeah, so
thank you for having me as well, man. I appreciate you and my recovery.
You're good.
Bless.